All right. Welcome to Full Stack. My name is Jeffrey. You can call me Geo. And I'm one of the organizers here at Full Stack. And to be honest, this is a complete test. I have no idea what we're doing here, but I'm glad you're here along for the ride, to be honest. I've got a bit of a crazy setup here. So I may knock the table and the whole thing will go crazy and knock back and forth. But that's okay. So I'm glad you guys are here. I can see some highs in the comments. I don't know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. If you can let me know in the comments if you can't hear me, that would be great. In the meantime, you'll see at the bottom of the screen here, right around here, you'll see that you can join our Slack. And the plan tonight is we're going to be watching a video together, and it's going to be streaming on YouTube. So I'm going to use YouTube to stream a video on YouTube. Thanks, Richard. Watch this. Hey, Richard. Oh, man, look at that. That looks beautiful. So we're going to be streaming a video from YouTube on YouTube. So very meta. And hey, why not use the technology if you have it, right? So we're going to be watching this video that I found very interesting. Hopefully you will too. And it's a general in nature. So hopefully it doesn't, well, I know it doesn't specify a specific programming language or paradigm. It's enough that everyone can get something out of it, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you. In the meantime, I mentioned the Slack thing. So if you join our Slack community, we will be discussing the video after we watch it together. It's about 40 minutes long. So we can hop into Slack and start discussing it. We can ask questions, maybe put some disagreements, maybe put some things that you do differently or some things that you agree with. Anyway, we'd like to continue the discussion around the video. So one of the things we like most about Full Stack is that there's a community around it. Let me mute this. So there's a community around it. Unfortunately, we can't have people in the building right now because of obvious reasons. In fact, maybe I could put my mask on here. So we can't have people in the building, but we can have people online. And so we thought, well, let's try this online thing. Let's see how it works. So here we are. So this is the community. It's online, it's virtual, but hopefully it's enough of a community that you guys and gals will stick around and get something out of it. So what I would like to do is every Full Stack, we typically have some announcements and we have a couple speakers that are around 20 minutes long. This is obviously going to be a little bit different because you're not all here and we can't interact with you one-on-one. You can interact with me. It's kind of a one-to-many and a many-to-one. So it's going to be a little bit different. But what I would like to do is typically in a Full Stack, we have kind of a time where we announce whether we have whether our jobs have job openings or whether you are looking for a job. So if you can put that in chat, if you are looking for a job or if your place of business is looking for another developer, maybe put that in chat and I'll put that up on the screen here if I see those come through. And we would like to make sure that we can continue that part of the community, even though we can't be together. Also, we are looking for any sort of suggestions you have regarding what we can be doing for you guys during this crazy time. So I know that some of you may be out of work. It depends on which industry you're a developer for as to whether or not you're hurting or not. And we want to be cognizant of that and help you if you need help. So if you are looking for work or looking for resources or looking for any way to be with the community or be part of the community or look for a job or help things out, please let us know. Berg says, secrets out of the bag, that we might be hiring soon. We being Planning Center. I work for Planning Center and Jeff Berg here. So I don't know. I'm sure it's a developer. I don't know anything about it. So maybe Berg can tell us more, although he says shh, so obviously he can't tell us anymore. And then Eddie, hey, welcome. First time part of the group. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us in this crazy experiment, I guess I can call it, because we're all trying to figure out what we're doing. I just got here and I think I figured out how to set up the mic and everything. But we'll go from here. So if you have any suggestions about what we can be doing for you, we have a form that you can fill out online that can provide us any sort of feedback, whether it's things we can do for you, things we can provide for you, things you want to provide to the community, topics you'd like for us to cover. I have some ideas of things we could maybe do together that could be fun. What if we did like a group project or had a couple different group projects we have set up? So that's something I'm chewing on. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that or not, but let me get the URL for that form. I actually didn't prepare that part of it because I didn't know I would be making this announcement, but I do think it's important that that we have that. So this particular form is for suggestions. You'll see in the title, it's for suggestions for this particular week. Don't worry about that. This will be the form that you can fill out. Anything you put in there past this date, I'll obviously not think that it's for tonight. It's for October or anytime in the future. So feel free to fill those out for us. That'd be really helpful. So anything else you guys want to go over? Actually, thank you, Berg, for the stream setup. Yeah, it is nice. I couldn't figure out how to get this lamp on, so I pulled it up from the corner, and it's sitting there for reasons, I guess. I thought it looked weird in that corner without that, so yeah, I pulled it over. Someone have to teach me how to turn on the lamp. I got the main lights turned on, but not the lamp. Let me put this banner back up for the Full Stack Talks form. So fill that out. Let us know what we can do for you and how best we can work with you. Now, if there's anything else you want me to cover, put it in the comments right now. Oh, wait, Eddie. I got it. Eddie is looking for an opportunity in full stack development. Eddie, if you don't mind, let us know also what kind of developer you are. You front end, back end, full stack. What technologies do you have experience in, that kind of stuff? And I don't know if you want to put your email address on a public YouTube stream. Yeah, in Slack. Let's do it in Slack. So join the Slack and put the details in there. Let's do it that way. Although the Slack link will be live for maybe a couple hours. I'll deactivate it after a while after the stream. So put it in Slack and it'll be safe there. That's a good idea. All right. 2 more minutes. I don't know how much delayed this is, so I'm going to give you 2 more minutes before we start this stream. Let me tell you a little bit about the stream. We got a lot of good suggestions for topics to cover for this week. Some I thought were good for maybe the next one. This first one I felt needed to be a general kind of talk, maybe more of a soft talk, or not specific to a technology, but more ideas. So I did find this one to be very good. I skimmed it a little bit and thought it was cool. So anyway, the name of this talk is What We Left Behind, 10 Valuable Skills from the 1990s. One of the things I really enjoy is taking a look back at old technologies and trying to figure out how they worked. And I believe that when you go back to the ones and zeros, maybe not that far, but go back to more closer to the core of things, you can find interesting ways of doing things that our current technologies may have glossed over, and we've forgotten those things. So I thought this was a good thing to go over in computer science and ways we can better ourselves in ways that in the 1990s they were doing well, and we just thought we did things better, and then generations we've forgotten where we've come from. So let's do that. All right, I'm not seeing anything else in the comments. Straight to COBOL talk. It's not a COBOL talk, but it's yeah, these guys probably wrote some COBOL in their day. I'll say it that way. All right, let's see if this works. Let's get the stream going. I'll keep this banner up for a little while longer to get you guys some information. Oh, you know what? I need to put the Slack group back up. Let's do it that way. So join the Slack group. We'll discuss this after the video, and I'll come back on after the video starts. I can do something sweet like this. Watch this. Add to stream. Oh, that's okay. Oh, it's on that side. And then I can, oh, dang. So I can go back in this and make you guys sick the whole time, or we can just start. So maybe there's a poll. I think we'll just start. All right. So here is the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for listening to my rambling. Hopefully you got something out of it. I'll meet you back after the video. Oh, I'm not hearing the video. Are you guys hearing the video? It's because I muted it.
Hi, and welcome to our talk, What We Left Behind, Forgotten Lessons from the 1990s. I'm Garth, and this is Eamon. So a little bit about myself. I was a full-time software developer for about 6 years, and then the option came up to give training a go, and I thought, what the hell, I'll try it, probably only last 6 months, and that was about 15 years ago. So back of an envelope, I've done over 1,000 deliveries and a bunch of coaching, mentoring, all that kind of stuff. So Eamon, do you want to say a few things about yourself?
Yep, I haven't been training as long as Garth. I've been doing this for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I had about 15 years development and architect experience. So I've done about 200 deliveries or so in the last number of years.
Very good, excellent.
Yep.
I got Eamon, a wave.
Oh,
Oh. That was a close one.
That was a close one, because we're clearly definitely on a boat.
We are on a boat.
Yeah.
Yes, so we are on a boat in Copenhagen, and we are definitely not at Instill. No, if we were at Instill, it would be a software development company based out of Belfast.
Our
yes.
office actually looks a little bit like this cabin.
It does actually, yes. It's very, very strange, yes. Where we build software, we teach training courses, we do coaching, mentoring, all that kind of stuff. So you can find us online at instill.co. And here are a few shots from the office where we are definitely not right now, and some of the people that we work for. So what this talk is about is it's about a 20-year gap in your understanding, and we all have this. So there are the things that you learn from your own personal experience, and then there are the things that you're taught about as history, and in between those two, there's a 20-year gap, and we all have it. But of course, for each of us, it covers a slightly different period in history. Yeah. So Eamon and myself are both grumpy and old, aren't we?
Yeah, you're grumpier.
Yes.
And older.
And older, yes.
But I'm grey hair.
Exactly, yes. So our 20-year gap is probably further back than yours is. You know, we remember things that you don't. And that's why whenever young, innocent developers get all excited about some technology, you know, and then go tell the grumpy old developers about it, we all go, nah, you know, because it's not in our dead zone. You know, we remember this the last time it came around. And it's made even worse in IT because in computer science, we ignore our own history. So if you ask the average developer to describe the history of the IT industry, well, they'll say, of course, you had Lovelace and Babbage, yeah, and then later that week, Turing came along, and by the end of the summer, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, anything you can possibly want. You know? So as an industry, we're very bad at understanding and documenting our own history, and that means that the same things just come around time after time, and we fail to learn from our mistakes. So again, if you talk to the average developer, well, they'll say that in the 1990s, we were all idiots. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. And then they invented Agile, and it's been all plain sailing since then. Yeah. So we would beg to differ. We would say it's a little bit more complicated than that. Yeah. So let's just talk about what it was like in the 1990s. Well, it was a crazy time. We were all obsessed with machine learning and artificial intelligence. We were having debates about static and dynamic typing and which was better. Nobody really knew how to do estimation, and we argued about that. People were interested in functional programming. And of course, back then we were making fun of JavaScript developers. And these are some of the TV shows and movies that were on screen at the time. So of course, these days, it's completely different, isn't it, David?
Totally different.
Totally different. Everything has changed. We're obsessed with machine learning and AI. We're having arguments about static and dynamic typing. We don't know how to estimate use cases and features. We're all fascinated by functional programming, and we're making fun of JavaScript developers. So it's a whole new world, you know.
Totally different.
Yeah. How can we learn any lessons from the 90s? So yeah. So in the 90s, we did have some really stupid ideas, and one of these silly ideas was that the network was the computer. So there would be these independent components that we would write and deploy. Some of them we would deploy ourselves. Others would have been pre-deployed for us, and we would wire these together to create complicated applications. So the average developer, they would just be writing glue code and creating big, long configuration files, you know, with lots of opportunities for typos and confusion and so on. I mean, we're never going to do that again.
We're not going to make that mistake again.
No, absolutely not. Oh, yes. Moving on. Yeah. So another thing worth bearing in mind is that there's been very few new ideas in the history of computing. So a nice quote here from our friend Don Davis. It is my conjecture that there has been nothing new in computing since the 1970s, with the one exception of AI, which was 1984. Okay, so everything else is just relearning what we knew already. You know? And you can see this out there from tweets like this. So in preparing this talk, we went out and talked to a whole bunch of colleagues. So some of these are friends we've known for 20 years, other people we just know through online debates. But these are examples of the people that we went out and sourced quotes from. And there was a bunch of other people as well who preferred to remain anonymous. But what we're going to do in the talk is we're going to try and give you 10 lessons from the 90s, okay? So our friend James Bunch, he wins the award for nailing all the themes. You know, he found almost all the themes that we're going to talk about.
And we should say that this is not every developer. This is just some of the places where we've seen that people have forgotten the lessons. Nobody at this conference could learn anything from this talk.
Nope.
This is only for the bad developers, the other people.
Yes, yes. This is for you to take away for the other developers at your companies who aren't doing things right. You know, so you go out there and try and educate them. We know you're all brilliant.
Yep.
Absolutely. Excellent. So we're going to do this turnaround. So I'll start first, if that's okay, Eamon. Excellent. So I'll kick off with number one, draw more pictures. Okay. So back in the 90s, we drew an awful lot of software engineering diagrams. Yeah. And then unfortunately, the UML came along and ruined it. Yeah. So there was an obsession with this thing called executable UML, which we'll mention in a minute. But worth saying, diagrams are great. I love diagrams, yeah, especially state charts. So sadly, in this recorded format, I can't ask, but I'd love to know how many of you are drawing state charts at the moment. State charts are my favorite kind of diagram. So whether you're doing OO or functional or whatever, they're great. You know? So these days, we just don't draw enough diagrams. There are a few exceptions. So for those of you who are into your reactive programming, you may draw marble diagrams of reactive streams, stuff like that. But mostly we don't draw software engineering diagrams anymore. Yeah. And a great quote here from our friend David Kennedy to explain why. So UML was a good idea. He'll fight you over it. Turning it into a cargo cult of detail was a bad idea. The people who write wiki articles about the different types of shoes in each Star Trek film, well, they got hold of it and they ruined it through over-elaboration. So what we mean by that is that you can draw any software engineering diagram at one of three levels of detail. So you've got an analysis level diagram, and that's kind of a sketch, you know, that shows you what you intend to do. And then you've got the design level diagram, and that's not at the level of code, but it's not far away. It's the thing that you look at before you go and you write the code. And then you've got a blueprint, you know. So a blueprint is a diagram that shows you how the code actually works. And the trouble is that tool vendors dragged us to that third one. So the tool vendors got us obsessed with buying tools that would draw diagrams in so much detail that you could push a magic button and the code would just drop out. Yeah, but sadly that wasn't true. But that just spoiled the UML for everybody, and it put a bad taste in people's mouths that persists to this day. Now, that doesn't mean that people are drawing diagrams. So we go to a lot of conferences, and we recently helped organize serverless days in Belfast, and everybody's presentations had a ton of diagrams. Yeah, but A, there was no standardization, and B, they'd obviously got help from quality graphic designers, which is great, you know, but we can't all do that. You know, wouldn't it be better if there was a proper standard that we could all use for cloud engineering diagrams and embedded systems diagrams and functional and OO diagrams and so on. So what we're saying is that we suffer really badly from A, not drawing enough diagrams, and B, there not being enough standardization. So shout out to Simon Brown in the C4 model, who's one of the few people who's doing absolutely amazing work in this area, you know, but we need a lot more people doing what he's doing at the minute. So what's the lesson? What do we think we could learn from the 90s? Well, get into the habit of drawing more diagrams of architecture. And then we need to define different notations for different domains, the domains that are current at the moment, mobile, serverless, all that kind of thing. And we need a new generation of modeling tools that work well, probably work online, and don't cost the earth. And we need to learn to differentiate between the different levels of abstraction. So developers tend to worry that whenever they draw an analysis diagram, it's not in enough detail, but we have to realize that that's fine. You know, if you're drawing the diagram at the right level of detail, then you're doing the job right. So that's number one. Eamon, do you want to do number two?
Yep, thanks very much. This one sort of follows on a little bit from that. So this is thinking about critiquing your own design. So what we've seen with the reduction in the number of diagrams is people are not investing as much in design in general. You know, back in the early 2000s and sort of late 90s, architecture was sort of commoditized with things like JE and other frameworks like that, where the idea was that we could just simply bolt a couple of things together and end up with a coherent, sensible architecture. And that's really not the case. And we're seeing fewer people actually devoting the time to doing this design. It's sort of seen like a dirty word with some of the agile movements. Now, it's not to say that people aren't doing it, like all of these arguments, but we're definitely seeing a reduction in it, you know. So what we sort of find is that people have switched the review process to being like bike shedding, just nitpicking syntax. So what we're seeing is some good quotes here from people. We've got Jamie Allen here saying, very little design or forethought goes into many systems. And then to make matters worse, testing isn't being done because engineers aren't being incentivized to do so. And this is sort of a big problem in our industry. We actually have to try and re-emphasize the importance of doing these designs and doing these design reviews, okay? Not just doing the nitpicking of syntax peer review. Here's another one from Einar. He's saying, my impression is that we somehow managed to simultaneously under-model and over-engineer, because we're not thinking about it. We're just pulling in these big components, plonking them together and hoping that at the end we'll end up with something good. But it's really going to be just a mess. So John Nolan here's got a great summary of this. We never said that architecture was bad, but because it was associated with big think up front or big design up front, it got besmirched and it was being of the same evil. So it's a bit like we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater with this one. Here's another one from Martin Thompson. Doing a sensible amount of upfront design got rejected with a misunderstanding of agile and dogma taking over. So this is again, I mean, agile has this concept of just enough documentation, just enough design, just enough diagrams to basically make better products and make sure that we know how our systems are working. Because as we're building bigger and bigger systems, we have to have this understanding. So the summary here, the takeaways, try to make design reviews part of your process, not just syntax peer reviews on GitHub and things like that. Run your code and make sure that it's actually working. I oftentimes see people doing reviews and they're not actually running up the system. Look out for and promote patterns. As human beings, we're really, really good at pattern recognition, so we don't get eaten by lions and things like that. Watch out for patterns. They're good to make it easy to rapidly understand the system, but also spot errors when things are deviating from the pattern. And then coming up with these documentation patterns similar to diagram patterns. And just step back from the syntax and actually think about your system, think about your design, think about your algorithms more.
Cool. Very good. Excellent. So back to me for number 3. So read and write. So again, would love to know how many of you have read Neuromancer. So inside Neuromancer, there's a prediction that being literate and being a programmer would just part ways. Okay, so they'd go off in other directions. So eventually you could get coders, hackers who are incredibly good at their job, but as it says there in the quote from the book, are barely print literate. So that was the projection. And sadly, it's increasingly becoming true. Okay, so you see a lot more tweets like this on the internet now. So is it really documentation if you can understand it without a YouTube video and a whole bunch of blog posts? So we've got acclimatized to seeing really bad documentation, and thereby we kind of think that we can get away with writing bad documentation as well. So developers have got into this hideous negative loop where we think that you can't just open up the documentation and read it. You've got to go to Stack Overflow. Should say, as humble trainers, we use this website called Stack Overflow, where people can post questions. Now that they wouldn't have heard of it, but if you're having a bad day, you might find it quite useful. So the developers go out to things like Medium. They can go out to Stack Overflow and so on, but the documentation is no longer their first port of call. So as I say, they seem to have got into this negative feedback pattern where we as developers see per documentation. So we expect that we'll have to go out to find people's blog posts. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but we gather information from these blog posts, from Stack Overflow questions. We do personal research of our own and so on. And we end up with learned avoidance. What we learn that you just don't go to the documentation as your first port of call. You Google and then you go to Medium. So this is not a good thing. Yeah. So again, a nice quote here from Martin Thompson. Documentation skills got lost as Agile got people thinking code is all you need. And again, we're not slagging off Agile here. We're slagging off some of the myths that came off Agile. And one of the myths that came off Agile was that you didn't need to write documentation. You didn't need to be good at writing documentation and so on. So we think this is a serious issue. We think all developers should go. I mean, we go on courses to learn how to become better technical writers and so on. We think it should be a core skill of every developer. And our CEO wrote a little blog post on this, which we would recommend. So what we would say to developers today, well, break the cycle of badly written documentation. Yeah, spend more time in your docs and less time writing, semi-angry, passive-aggressive posts on Medium and answering questions on Stack Overflow. Not that those are bad things in themselves, but less time on those, more time on the documentation. Yeah, and go on training courses, read books, read articles about how to be a technical author. Time spent on that will be rewarded, and then find some way to integrate documentation with example code. So for many modern languages, there's now a way where you can have runnable code embedded with the documentation, so people can read a paragraph and then look at some code and run it and modify it within a REPL. And I think that's great. Cool.
Cool. Yep. So the fourth one is invented here, and this might sound similar to something that you've maybe heard before. So in the 90s, software companies used to write a lot of their own libraries and their own tools. I remember working for a company, and within the company, within different teams within the same company, they had their own data structures, their own operating system constructs, like mutexes and semaphores. This is within the one company. So we definitely took it too far in this era, which is where we've described this as the not invented here syndrome. That's definitely something that we made a mistake in. Even Linus Torvalds here, he's saying the not invented here syndrome is a disease. So we took it too far, but we've swung the other way now. We've gone to the other extreme, and now we're really afraid to use our own code at all. We're constantly going to a library-based solution for anything. Oh, I need to concatenate two strings together. Let's see what JavaScript libraries out there will do that for me. And we're not really thinking about the cost of this. We sort of find now in projects, and it's not only the front end. I think the front end probably does this a little bit worse, but on the front end and the back end, we typically don't know what our dependencies are. We have these huge dependency trees, and we just don't know what's in there. We don't know, if they're buggy, if they're going to be supported, or to a more extreme, if they're nefarious, if they're actually going to send our Bitcoin credentials off, and these sorts of things are happening out there. So we're sort of just crossing our fingers and hoping. We need to sort of try and rein this in and get a little bit more control. So as I say, front end gets a bit of a bad rap here.
Because there are never any errors in back end.
No.
Back end developers rock. Yeah, we don't make mistakes.
Yeah, and the stuff is always really clearly understood.
Yep.
But I actually like React, but I'm picking on React here. So here we're creating a React project, and this is like hello world. I haven't written any business logic here. I'm getting some sort of outputs, some errors. Probably fine.
It's just warnings.
Let's see how many dependencies we have. We have 1,190 dependencies. That's before I've written a line of code. So it just sort of feels when we're doing these npm and yarn installs that we're just dumping all this stuff in, and we're just assuming it works because, well, enough people use React, so it's probably not a problem. Here's another sort of summary of this from module counts. So the yellow line there is Java. And I hear one or two people use Java.
I hear they do. Yes.
But you can see that JavaScript isn't seeing npm, where we've got 1,200,000 modules. I'm sure it's all really, 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 really good code. So this is I love this quote from Jeff Taylor. He's saying packaging in C was hard, but it did make you intensely aware of your dependencies. Now, coming from a background of C and C++, I do not want to go back there. You're not going to make me go back there. I'm not going back there, okay? I don't want to deal with the way that...
Let's leave the header files in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm not going back. But this is very true that, you did have to really think about all of your moving parts, all of your dependencies. So there's maybe like something where we can learn a little from this, not go back,
Nope.
but maybe learn a little bit from this. So what's the lesson here? Try to take control of your dependencies, think about your dependencies, and really think about that cost benefit. If you can write it in one line of code that you own, maybe that's better. There's a time that it takes to learn a library, to teach other people in your team the library. Is the library going to support it? Does it have bugs? There is a cost there. So just evaluate, make sure that you're getting a lot of value from what you're getting. Now, React is doing something massive, so that's worth, but stop going for these like one-line solutions, going towards libraries, and try to understand your dependencies.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Very good. Next one, learn to test. So I'm sure you're familiar with the hashtag Kevlin Henny, where they put up bugs that have been observed in the wild, usually at airports. So here's one of my favorites where something's obviously gone wrong and they've vomited all the details of the build. I like to imagine it scrolls on a little bit and gives the home address of the senior developer and so on. So as software developers, we keep making mistakes, a couple of prominent ones here from the news. Yeah. And you might say, hold on, but didn't Agile instill respect for testing? Well, yes, Agile made us test infected at the level of unit testing, at the level of TDD, at the level of automated testing. But there's a lot more to testing than that. So here's a very famous diagram of the different testing quadrants. And if you're familiar with how testing has grown and evolved and matured as a profession ever since the 90s, they've done an awful lot of work. So we as developers, we live in the bottom left quadrant here. And then if you go to the top left, well, then that's where we're still doing automated tests, but it's more business facing. So that's where your BDD and so on lives. And then if you go to the top right, well, then there's the testing that you can't do because it's the test you didn't think to write. Yeah. So that's where you get professional testers testing your UI, or you're bringing real world customers into the room and letting them have a crack at the UI and so on. And then finally, in the bottom right is where you're doing the ility testing, so you're testing the performance, the scalability, the reliability, all that kind of thing. So if you show this graph to developers, they tend to go like this, So you go into quadrant 2 and they go, that's the cucumber stuff, isn't it? And then you talk about exploratory testing and they go, what? And then you mention performance and security and so on. It's like, well, that's what we do in the last week of the project if we have the time. Okay, so Agile instilled a huge respect in us developers for testing, but only in the bottom left quadrant. Yeah. So back in the day, we understood the job of a professional tester a lot more, and we relied on them an awful lot more, and possibly we appreciated QA staff a bit more as well. So if you're interested in seeing what the testers are getting up to these days, the Ministry of Testing is an absolutely wonderful site, and they publish all kinds of blogs and articles for professional testers, which is very good. Yeah. So what are we saying? Well, we're saying that developers today could have more respect for the tester's role. Yeah, they could understand more the whole scope of testing. So not just the unit testing stuff, not just the stuff that can be automated. That's maybe just 40% of it. There's a lot more than that. So realize that not all testing can be automated, and especially take the non-functional testing seriously, especially these days, the security and the performance.
Cool. So number 6, master the tools. And again, some people are very good at this, but with the amount of training that we do, we see a lot of people that are suffering from not really understanding how to leverage the wealth of things that we have available to us today. So what I'm talking about here is really like optimizing your workflow. So back in the day, working in C and C++, things took a lot longer. So I would do like an incremental change, and that could take half an hour. A full build of everything, including all of our dependencies, could take 24 hours. And when things took longer, when compiles took longer, machines were slower, you learned how to streamline. You learned how to keep things moving whenever things were taking this long. So you learned how to use keyboard shortcuts. You knew how to automate things. You knew how to write macros. You knew how to multitask so that you could prioritize things, so that things could keep moving in this sort of slower environment. And what we're seeing is, it's not everybody, but we're seeing that some people aren't really leveraging what we have available today. The machines that we have now today are so powerful. The tools are so good. There's so many good paid for and free tools out there that you really want to be able to make sure that you're leveraging these and maximizing the benefits that we have. I've seen people who are totally afraid to use the terminals. They've finished a degree and they've never been able to, they've never used the terminal, I've never used it in anger. I've seen them, their hands are never leaving the mouse. So like even in extreme of like right clicking to copy, right clicking to paste. And I think we can do better than this. The tools today can do so much heavy lifting, so much refactoring, navigation, insights into your code, debugging. We really want to make sure that we can sort of leverage these and maximize these. So this is Vim. Vim is about 30 years old, and it's it's a clone of Vi, which is over 40 years old. But this is still around today. Why is that? You will see in VS Code, in Visual Studio, in IntelliJ, WebStorm, all of these tools have plugins which give you a Vim experience inside the IDE. Why is this? It's because people who can use these tools are really, really productive. I know just enough to be dangerous, but it is a skill that every developer should be able to use this sort of tool, at least basically, because in these sort of remote distributed worlds we live in today, it may be the only interface that you have as well. So it's good just to be able to use this, but it's also good thinking about, what made this tool so good. It's the productivity once you learn to master. It's hard to master. It is hard to master, but it's worth that investment. Okay. This is something I would always do with the developers when they join my team. I would take like a cheat sheet of the IDE. So here we have IntelliJ, take the cheat sheet, and I would just take a highlighter and highlight the ones that I knew off the top of my head. And I just do it with PDFs or saving trees. But you can see that even in this single A4 cheat sheet, it's not a lot of shortcuts, but these are the ones that I just know muscle memory off the top of my head because they're that useful. It's like copy and paste, Control and C, Control and V, cut, Control and X. But then what about move code, rename methods, move methods, inline things? All of these sort of shortcuts can make you more productive, and we need to sort of make sure that people are becoming masters of the tools, like the same way that the tradesman would be. So what are we trying to say? What's the lessons here? Learn keyboard shortcuts. Learn your IDE. I don't care what IDE it is. I'm not going to promote one or another, but whichever one it is, try to be, know every inch of that tool and understand where it can help you. So you can spend more of your time thinking about the design, more of your time problem solving, not just doing mechanical typing and operations, not doing busy work. Be comfortable with the terminal. The terminal is ubiquitous. The terminal allows us to easily create repeatable steps that are easy to describe, easy to repeat. Just try to be generally lazy. Try to automate all that boring stuff so that you can do more important work. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Very good. So next one, focus on fundamentals. So as we said way back at the start, Eamon and I teach a lot. So I in particular have done over 1,000 deliveries at this stage, which is a little bit scary. So as time goes on, of course, you notice trends. Yeah. So there are things that we see people asking for less. Yeah. So back in the day, everybody was very keen on knowing about how to maximize and measure the performance of their applications. There was a lot of interest in how data structures actually worked. Maybe not how to write them from scratch, but how they actually worked, what the underlying algorithms were, how to use them properly, and so on. People were interested in adopting alternative collection libraries, especially in Java, ones optimized for performance, and so on. People wanted to know how the compiler applied different levels of optimization, how garbage collection worked, all that kind of thing. And we were giving out a lot of low-level detail on network protocols, threading APIs, all that kind of stuff. So these days, we do an awful lot less of this, okay? So nice little quote here from Martin Thompson. And basically, the idea is that if you're working on things like games, complex user interfaces, all that kind of thing, well, you're not afraid of complexity, and you have to think about things at a slightly lower level of detail, where the web has perhaps been overly kind to us. We've all got obsessed with document interchange and sending JSON up and down, and that's it. So one thing I always encourage new developers to do these days is take what I call the Bruce Wayne approach. So whenever Bruce Wayne goes out to learn how to be Batman, he travels the world, and he's not interested in learning about the newest flashy things in sports or martial arts or criminology or whatever he's studying. He goes back to the old masters. He goes back to the root styles. So if Bruce Wayne was going out and learning how to program, well, he'd learn from the world's best Smalltalk developer. He'd go out and find the world's best Lisp developers and Haskell developers and so on, because at the end of the day, there are only so many kinds of programming, and you can see them there on the slide. And once you've mastered these kinds of programming, well, then there'll be nothing new or scary or maybe even interesting in the latest flashy programming language. So it's a good idea maybe to go out and take the Bruce Wayne approach to learning about things. And these days, shed load of different resources out there. These are some of the books from my shelf of shame. At home, I have a shelf of technical books that I empty at about half the rate I'm adding to it. So that's why I refer to it as my shelf of shame. But these are the things I'm chewing my way through at the moment. These are some old, absolutely classic books that I would recommend to everybody, especially Implementation Patterns by Ken Beck, which is absolutely brilliant.
And you sort of notice about those recommendations, they're not about the hot technology at the time. Nope. They're timeless concepts, and
yes.
these are the books that we sort of continue to recommend even today.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of these books were written 20, 30 years ago, and they're just as relevant today as they were back then. So great quote from our friend Mark Allen. Back in the days when programmers were women and hardware was expensive, we could, and he listed a whole pile of amazing things we were able to do back in the day with limited memory and CPU cycles, but we couldn't fit it in the slide. If we were still coding with that care and ingenuity, who knows what we could achieve. At the very least, we'd be making a sizable dent in the climate emergency. We wouldn't be heating up so many CPUs. So what are we saying? Well, focus not on the latest shiny language or library or whatever, focus on reusable skills. Think a little bit more about algorithms, data structures, writing clean code, design principles, all that kind of thing, So try and cut down the amount of time you spend jumping around from shiny framework to shiny framework. Cool.
So number 8 here, value the individual. Now, in some ways, we've got a lot better at this over time. Work-life balance is something that's usually pretty much at the forefront of developers, and we do have a good lifestyle. We get rewarded, especially in the current market with hiring and that. But I think we've lost something, I think, along the way. So at the start, Agile was all about professionals. It was all about, doing a good job. It was trying to cut out waste so we could do a better job. It was not so that we could have an easier life. It was so that we could actually make better stuff and cut out waste. So it was about coming together and being self-organizing as a team and not following some blind sort of enterprise process, some checklist process that was just busy work. There was some assumptions. It was assumed that you were technically competent, you had the skills to do the work, but you also were a professional, that you wanted to do that good job, that drive was primary in your mind. And I think for most people that is, but there's something that's gone askew. I think because we're focusing on the group, we're not giving it the same amount of accountability to the individual. So this is a really nice quote. The strength of the pack is in the wolf, and then the strength of the wolf is in the pack. So, the group is going to fail or succeed as a group, and we're going to support each other. But we also have to make sure that each individual within the group is taking responsibility, being accountable, and being a professional. So we just need to make sure that, we're not developing methodologies which are discouraging this. So, for example, something like Scrum, is it creating such a prescribed process that people can just, I'm not accountable because I'm following the process, or, it's not my fault because the group has failed, it's not me. We need to make sure that we are taking, self-accountability, and we're showing dedication to projects and teams, and we're not saying, it's okay, in 6 months I'll just move job and do things like that. We have to be professionals. And I love this quote from Jason here. He's saying, agility is when employees get to act like grown-ups, that the employee is going to treat the business like it's their business, and they're going to make mature, responsible, professional decisions. So what's the takeaways? Take responsibility for your own work, be accountable for your own work, focus on your principles over process. Always keep asking, why am I doing this? Is this going to lead to better things for my business, for my customers, for my team? And just all in all, be a professional.
Very good. Excellent. So I'll do number 9. So this, I have to say, didn't come out of discussions with the people we referenced earlier in the slide. This is a personal feeling of mine and also friends of mine in the industry, usually after we've had a few drinks, And it's just the feeling that just like the 90s, we're on a bubble which is slowly expanding. Okay, so if you talk to anybody who lived through the dot-com boom and then the dot-com bust, they'll tell you how much fun it was. Yeah. So the big mistake that was made was to confuse potential with demand. In other words, everybody was saying, look, this stuff is currently being sold online, but there's all this other stuff. I mean, look at all of the other things that could be sold online. So yes, there was tremendous potential, but what happened was the market just kind of went, the market reached a point at which they were bored of buying things online, and they'd had quite enough of buying things online for the moment. Thank you very much. Yeah, and the bubble popped, and if you were graduating at that time, well, you were stacking shelves in Tesco's for 4 or 5 years, until you were able to find your first opportunity in the industry. So that was the dot-com bubble, and as I say, if you didn't live through it, it was an experience. Yeah. So again, this is not to blame developers today. If you are the 4th, 5th, 6th generation of students who's left college and had a bunch of offers and got a job immediately and so on, well, then it's natural to assume that this trend is just going to continue into the future. So here's a great quote from The Truman Show: "We accept the reality of the world with which we are presented." Yeah. So if you've graduated in the past decade, well, it's only natural that you would assume that the IT industry is going to go from strength to strength. But if you look at some recent use cases, things like WeWork, there are signs that the bubble has spread out and it might pop. And we're all saying, oh, think of the things that could be done with Bitcoin, or think of the things that could be done with machine learning, or think of the things that you can't do in a mobile way these days, and so on. And yes, once again, there's tremendous potential out there, but will there be the demand? Or will we just reach a point where we turn a corner and the demand hits a wall? So, what would we say? Be prepared for the next downturn. So nice little Riddick quote there, had to end sometime. So we've experienced 15 years of continuous growth. It can't go on forever. Okay, so build up your skill set, build up your resume, look beyond whatever current domain it is that you work in, build up a network of contacts so that you've got a cushion if and when things turn bad. Yeah. So prepare for extreme change, downturn in the industry. Think about your career, educate yourself, make sure that you still have the kind of profile where you're going to be in demand. Cool.
Yep. And the last one then is remember what matters. So this one's a bit more upbeat and less judgmental.
Yes. Always end on a high note. Yes.
So life is short. If you blink, it's going to be gone.
Yep.
Think about what's important. I guess just being a little bit older and having a bit of a longer career, we sort of see time moving past us and gives us a little bit of a perspective. So just, realize that time's going to pass quickly. Think about what's important. Try to enjoy, everything that's going on around you. Think about things outside of your career, outside of your life. Because life keeps on ticking. So this is a nice little quote here. So fill your bowl to the brim and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife and it will blunt. Chase after money and security and your heart will never unclench. Care about people's approval and you will be their prisoner. Do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. So thank you very much. Hope you find that talk useful. So let me just summarize the 10 lessons that we have. So number 1, draw more pictures. Okay, do more diagramming and go and try and standardize the kind of diagrams that you use. Number 2, don't just critique syntax, actually critique your design. Run other people's code, try and work out what they're doing wrong at the design level. Learn to be more of a technical author, demand better documentation, try to write better documentation yourself. Yeah. Invent a few more things locally. Don't just jump for the nearest library. Yeah. Learn to test in all its glory. Learn to understand all the different testing quadrants. Master the tools that you have, all the little shortcuts and opportunities for automation and so on. Focus on the underlying fundamentals of our industry, the timeless truths. As well as appreciating that you're part of a group, in an agile process. Also focus on your own individual skills, individual responsibility, accountability, making your contribution. Feel the fear. Remember that we've had 15 years of continuous growth, but it can't go on forever. And finally, remember what matters. For example, I think I was so busy I missed out the 2000s. So, remember at the end of the day, it's just a job. Okay. So having said that, as two developers born in the 90s, I think at this stage we want to say, go away and get off my lawn, you damn kids.
Yes. Damn kids, get off our lawn.
Yes, off you go. Yeah.
All righty. That was the talk. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I did. Of course, I saw it before, and I'm obviously brought it to you guys, so I thought it was good enough to show you. In the Slack that you see the link down below, in there I've put out the 10 points that they had in the general room, so we can continue discussion there. Hopefully you guys can grab a beverage of choice. I've got some nice tea here in my new planning center mug. Look at that. Remember, Berg said that we may be hiring soon, so maybe we should have like a job board type room in the Slack. I'll create that. I'll make a job board room. We can discuss looking for jobs or providing jobs in that room in a little bit. Anything else you guys want to discuss while we're here live on YouTube? Hopefully this format is okay with you guys. And I hope to have some co-hosts at some point. We may be doing some live coding at some point. There are other ideas that we have that we're throwing around that hopefully we can put into place. And honestly, the talk that we just watched was from GoToConf, I think in Chicago. I can't remember when it was. I think it was in the spring. Anyway, the whole, I don't know, GoToConf for me is a really good conference. I haven't actually been to one, but I've watched some of the talks from the conferences, and a lot of the people I respect speak there. And a lot of the talks aren't necessarily language specific, which is one of the things I like about it. So there's a lot. If you go to their channel, just follow the link I put in Slack and go to their channel. There's a ton of great talks. In fact, I had a bit of a hard time picking one from the list I found. I've got like 30 tabs open in my browser right now for all the talks I thought would be good. So, yeah, I think that might be it. Thank you for showing up. I know this is an experiment. Let me know, like through a direct message in Slack or something. I'm Geo in Slack. Just let me know if this works for you. Let me know any suggestions you have for this format. And I'll see you guys in Slack. Thanks for showing up. Have a good night.